Section number 29 of Psychology, the Cognitive Powers. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by John Fiore. Psychology, the Cognitive Powers by James McCosh. Conclusion: Rise of Our Ideas. We have traced the powers of intelligence from the lowest to the highest, and have shown how our cognitions and ideas arise. From every separate faculty, as they have been arranged, we get one or more of these. We receive knowledge, probably our primary, from the senses. We thus come to know body and its modifications, especially its essential qualities, extension and resisting force. We thus get our idea of space. A large school, the sensationalists, maintain that we get all our ideas from sensation. This is a fundamental mistake. We have other and higher sources of knowledge. We get cognitions and ideas from self-consciousness, the knowledge of self in its many and varied modes, as I have been endeavoring to unfold them, as knowledge, conscience, feeling, and will. It is true that a full and distinct knowledge of self, of the ego, is a late acquisition, but from birth there is a knowledge of self in all our acts. Locke held that we get all our ideas from sensation and reflection. This is likewise a mistake. From these two, we get our ideas of existing things, bodily and spiritual. But in the exercise of the powers as we contemplate things, we get other ideas, such as the idea of time. When we reflect on the past and the infinite, as we go out in thought and conceive more and more, and yet are sure that we have not come to the end, and that what we thus believe in is perfect, and nothing can be added to it. In these exercises, faith is at work from the beginning, and we have a conviction of the reality of things not perceived by the senses, external or internal. By comparison, we discover the relations of things, discover universal interdependence, and extend our knowledge indefinitely, upward and downward, and all around, and still are among realities. When we come to speak of the motive powers, we may show that we get other ideas from them, as good and evil, as obligation, the imperative, from conscience, the lovely and unlovely from emotions, and choice and freedom from the will. The scattered rays may combine to form the pure white light, that is, the idea of the all-powerful and good God. Rise of ideas in the minds of children. A number of able men in various countries are engaged in this investigation, and have given us some interesting results. Only they may find some deeper ideas in the mind than they have yet brought out to view. It is evident that while some acts of newborn babes are simply reflex or instinctive, the result of heredity, the cognitive powers begin to work from the time of birth, if they do not, as I think, work before. We give some statements from Darwin's biographical sketch of an infant. The infant's eyes were fixed on a candle as early as the 9th day. Long before he was 40 days old, he could move his hands to his own mouth. When nearly 4 months old, and perhaps much earlier, from the manner in which the blood rushed into his face, it was evident that he easily got into a violent passion. When 45 days old, he was observed to smile. After more than a year, he spontaneously exhibited affection by kissing his nurse. At the age of 6 months and 11 days, he showed sympathy by his melancholy face when his nurse pretended to cry. When 4½ months old, he smiled at his image in a mirror, and in 2 months more, knew what the mirror was. Before he was a year old, he understood intonations and gestures, as well as several words and short sentences. F. H. Champney's Mind, Volume 6, speaks of an infant. His eyes were fixed on a candle when he was a week old. On the 14th day, he took notice of persons and moving objects. Smiling was reported at 5½ weeks, tears 2 days before the end of the 14th week. Professor Stanley Hall is engaged in important inquiries as to the knowledge and ignorance of children at school age. Some ideas, it is evident, cannot rise till there is a gathering of experience, and until relations have been discovered between things. Comparison cannot work till there are things known to compare. But within a short time after birth, the intuitive principle of cause and effect seems to work, and the infant anticipates the return of the pleasant light that so attracted it. There can be little associative power exercised till ideas have come up according to the associations of contiguity and correlation, and infants, in consequence, have little control over their trains of thought. Children have no knowledge, originally, of distance, but come to grasp at objects in less than a year from their birth. A pleasure from the perception of beauty of colors appears in children as soon as they apprehend objects, and gradually rises to higher forms. In childhood and onward, as soon as objects are apprehended, there is a seeking for connections. Will, as a natural gift, operates like intellect, from birth, but at first there is little knowledge of objects on which to work. The use of signs in thinking is found in children long before they are a year old, as, for instance, the sound of a bell announcing that supper is ready. I believe that even the mature man cannot form an adequate idea of infinity, but I agree with such profound thinkers as Anselm, Descartes, and Leibniz in thinking that all have it in the germ. I think I have perceived it budding in children of 2 years. The mind is ever stretching beyond the now and the present. I remember distinctly of musing, when under 12 years, on the mysteries involved, and losing myself not unpleasantly in the contemplation. Moral perceptions cannot appear till there is a knowledge of other beings to whom we owe duties. But conscience and affection come forth, of course in a low form, before the intelligent child has completed his first year. The dim idea of a power beyond the visible appears before school age, and may be exalted by teaching to a belief in gods or in one God. It may have been observed that throughout this work it has been loosely applied that at the basis of the operation of all the faculties there are fundamental truths. The tests of these can be given. They are, first, self-evidence, or evidence seen at once in the very thing. Secondly, as following from the first, there is necessity. We cannot be made to think or believe otherwise. Thirdly, and confirmatory of the other two, there is catholicity, or universal consent. The exposition of these carries us beyond inductive psychology into metaphysics, or the science of first principles. Footnote. These principles are unfolded in my work on The Intuitions of the Mind Inductively Investigated. End footnote. End of section number 29. Read by John Fiore in Chester Springs on the 25th of June, 2024. End of Psychology, The Cognitive Powers by James McCosh.